Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Station Alpha, watching the massive alien ships drift into Earth's solar system like dark clouds before a storm. The ships were enormous, each one easily the size of Manhattan, their black hulls decorated with strange symbols that seemed to shift and move when you looked at them directly. "How many?" she asked her communications officer, Lieutenant Rodriguez. 57 confirmed vessels, Captain. More arriving every hour." Rodriguez's voice was steady, but Sarah could see the tension in his shoulders. "They're not responding to any of our hail attempts." Sarah nodded grimly. 3 days ago, humanity had been alone in the universe. Now it seemed like half the galaxy had come knocking on their door. The first contact protocols they'd spent decades preparing suddenly felt laughably inadequate. The main screen flickered, and Admiral Morrison's weathered face appeared from Earth Command. "Captain Chen, we're getting similar reports from stations around the globe. Whatever these things want, they're making sure we can't miss the message." Before Sarah could respond, every screen on the bridge went black. Then, slowly, an image began to form. It showed a creature that made Sarah's skin crawl, tall, insectoid, with 4 arms that ended in sharp claws. Its head was triangular, dominated by compound eyes that reflected light like broken mirrors. When it spoke, its voice came through the translation systems in a tone that sounded both bored and contemptuous. "Humans of Earth," the creature began. "I am High Commander Zefak of the Galactic Tribute Council. Your species has been discovered and catalogued. According to the ancient laws that govern civilized space, all newly discovered species must pay tribute to their betters." Sarah felt her jaw clench. The casual arrogance in the alien's voice made her want to reach through the screen and punch those compound eyes. Zefak continued, "Your tribute has been calculated based on your planet's resources and population. You will provide us with 50 million of your people to serve as workers in our industrial complexes. You will also surrender 70% of your planet's mineral wealth, including all rare earth elements and precious metals. Finally, you will provide us with 10,000 of your brightest scientists and engineers." The alien paused, as if expecting gratitude. "This is generous. Most species are required to give up 80% of their population. Your compliance is expected within 30 solar rotations. Failure to comply will result in the complete elimination of your species." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. 30 days, Rodriguez whispered. "They want us to hand over 50 million people in 30 days. Sarah stared at the blank screen, feeling a cold rage building in her chest. "Get me President Martinez," she said quietly, "and patch this conversation through to every government leader on Earth." Within minutes, representatives from every major nation were connected to the emergency conference. President Martinez spoke first, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. "I assume you all heard the same message we did." 50 million people, said Prime Minister Nakamura from Japan. "They're talking about enslaving 50 million human beings. And they expect us to just hand them over like cattle," added Chancellor Weber from Germany. General Patterson from the Pentagon leaned forward on his screen. "Ma'am, we need to consider our options here. These ships are using technology we can't even begin to understand. Their smallest vessel could probably glass half of Europe." "Are you suggesting we comply?" President Martinez's voice was dangerously quiet. "I'm suggesting we be realistic. Maybe we can negotiate, reduce the numbers." "Negotiate?" Sarah found herself speaking before she could stop herself. All eyes turned to her screen. "General, with respect, you don't negotiate with kidnappers." "Captain Chen," President Martinez said, "what's your assessment of their military capabilities?" Sarah looked at her tactical display. "They have us outgunned by a factor of about 1,000 to 1. Their ships show energy signatures we've never seen before. If this comes to a fight, we lose. Badly." The silence that followed was heavy with despair. Then President Martinez spoke again, and there was something in her voice that made Sarah sit up straighter. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been thinking about what we're facing here. These aliens see us as inferior. They expect us to roll over and accept slavery because they have bigger guns. That's exactly what they expect, agreed President Okafor from Nigeria, because apparently that's what other species have done. Which brings up an interesting point, President Martinez continued. If every other species just gives in when faced with superior firepower, then maybe these aliens have never faced real resistance. Sarah felt a smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. You're thinking of fighting. I'm thinking of surviving with our dignity intact, Martinez replied. General Patterson, I want you to contact every military installation on the planet. I want our entire arsenal cataloged and ready. Ma'am, even our nuclear weapons won't scratch those ships. Maybe not, but humans have never been known to go quietly. Martinez's voice hardened. Captain Chen, I want you to send a message back to this High Commander Zefak. What should I tell him? Tell him that Earth's answer is no. The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Sarah watched as humanity mobilized with a speed and determination that would have impressed her if the situation weren't so desperate. Military bases around the world came alive with activity. Nuclear submarines surfaced and pointed their missiles skyward. Fighter jets took to the air in formations so large they looked like swarms of angry insects. But Sarah knew it wouldn't be enough. The alien ships hung in space like patient predators, their dark hulls reflecting no light. Occasionally, smaller craft would detach from the main fleet and sweep through Earth's atmosphere, scanning and recording everything they saw. Dr. Elizabeth Hayes from NASA's Xenobiology Department appeared on Sarah's screen, her usually neat hair disheveled from hours of frantic work. Captain, we've been analyzing the transmissions from these ships. There's something you need to know. What is it, Doctor? These aren't soldiers, Captain. The energy signatures, the ship configurations, the casual way they approached Earth. This is a bureaucratic operation. They're tax collectors. Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. Tax collectors? Think about it. They gave us exactly 30 days. They calculated our tribute based on some kind of formula. They didn't even bother to study our military capabilities before making their demands. This is routine for them. How many worlds do you think they've done this to? Dr. Hayes pulled up a star chart covered in red dots. Based on the references in their transmission to ancient laws and civilized space, I'd say hundreds, maybe thousands. Sarah stared at the chart, each red dot representing a world that had surrendered its people to slavery rather than fight. Doctor, in all your analysis of their transmissions, did you find any reference to species that fought back? Dr. Hayes was quiet for a moment. No, Captain. I don't think any of them fought back. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She stood in the observation deck of her station, looking out at the alien fleet. The ships were beautiful in their own terrifying way, their black hulls seeming to absorb the light of distant stars. She wondered how many worlds had looked up at those same ships and chosen to surrender rather than fight. Her personal communicator chimed. It was a text message from her daughter, Emma, who was studying at Stanford. Mom, saw the news. Are we really going to fight them? Sarah stared at the message for a long time before typing back, Yes, sweetheart, we are. Why? The odds are impossible. Sarah looked out at the alien fleet again, thinking about 50 million people being marched away in chains, thinking about humanity's children growing up as slaves on distant worlds. She typed, Because some things are worse than death. The next morning brought news that made Sarah's blood run cold. High Commander Zefak had sent another transmission, this one broadcast on every television, radio, and internet connection on Earth. The alien's compound eyes seemed to look directly at each viewer as he spoke. Humans of Earth, We have detected military preparations on your world. This is foolish. To demonstrate the futility of resistance, we will provide a demonstration. The transmission cut to an image of Mars. One of the smaller alien ships, no bigger than a destroyer, had moved into position near the red planet. A beam of light, barely visible, reached out from the ship to Mars's surface. Where the beam touched, the planet began to change. A section of the Martian surface simply vanished, leaving a perfectly spherical crater that went down so far it glowed with heat from the planet's core. The crater was easily visible from Earth with telescopes, a wound in Mars that would remain forever. Your most powerful weapons are as toys compared to our technology, Zefak continued. You have 27 solar rotations remaining. Choose wisely. The transmission ended, leaving humanity staring at the mutilated surface of Mars. Sarah was in an emergency meeting with Earth Command when Lieutenant Rodriguez burst into the conference room. Captain, you need to see this. President Martinez is about to make a statement. The main screen switched to show the White House press room. President Martinez walked to the podium with a confidence that seemed impossible given what they'd all just witnessed. She looked directly into the cameras, and when she spoke, her voice carried to every human being on Earth. My fellow citizens of Earth, today we witnessed an act of destruction designed to frighten us into submission. The alien force currently occupying our solar system wants us to surrender 50 million of our people to slavery. They want us to give up our freedom, our dignity, and our future. She paused, letting her words sink in. I stand before you today to tell you that America's answer remains the same. Earth's answer remains the same. We will not comply. We will not surrender our people to slavery. We will not go quietly into the night. Sarah felt her chest tighten with pride and terror. I know the odds, Martinez continued. I know their technology is beyond anything we possess. I know that by choosing to resist, we are choosing a path that may lead to our extinction. But I also know something else. I know that we are human beings. We are the species that chose to leave our caves and explore the world. We are the species that chose to cross oceans in wooden ships. We are the species that chose to reach for the stars. The president's voice grew stronger. Throughout our history, we have faced impossible odds and found a way to survive. Not because we were the strongest or the smartest, but because we refused to give up. Today, we face our greatest challenge, and today we choose to stand and fight. She looked directly into the camera. To the aliens currently in our solar system, I have a message. You made a mistake when you chose Earth. You made a mistake when you chose humanity, and you're about to find out why. The broadcast ended, and Sarah realized she was holding her breath. Around the world, she knew 6 billion human beings were making the same choice their leaders had made. They would not go quietly. They would fight, even if it killed them all. High Commander Zefak received Earth's response in his command chamber aboard the flagship Harvester of Worlds. He had expected fear, pleading, perhaps some futile attempts at negotiation. What he got instead was a single word repeated in hundreds of human languages. No. His aide, a nervous creature from a species that had surrendered 3 centuries ago, chittered anxiously. Commander, they are mobilizing their primitive weapons. Should we destroy them now? Zefak studied the reports flowing in from his scout ships. The humans were indeed mobilizing, but their weapons were laughably primitive. Nuclear fission bombs, chemical rockets, kinetic projectiles, technology that was thousands of years behind the Galactic Tribute Council's capabilities. No, he said finally. Let them play with their toys. In 26 rotations, when they see the futility of their position, they will surrender. They always do. But as he watched the tactical displays showing human military movements, Zefak felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries of tribute collection. Uncertainty. Every other species had either surrendered immediately or after a brief show of token resistance. The humans were different. They were mobilizing their entire planet. It was almost as if they actually intended to fight. On Earth, the mobilization continued. Every nuclear weapon on the planet was armed and targeted. Every military installation was placed on highest alert. Scientists worked around the clock to find any weakness in the alien technology. Factories that had produced consumer goods were retooled to manufacture weapons. But Sarah knew, as did every military leader on Earth, that conventional weapons would not be enough. The demonstration on Mars had made that clear. They needed something else, something the aliens wouldn't expect. As she stood on her bridge, watching the alien fleet maintain its patient vigil, Sarah Chen made a decision that would echo through the galaxy for centuries to come. "Rodriguez," she said quietly, "get me Dr. Hayes, and patch me through to every space-based installation humanity has ever built." "Ma'am." Sarah smiled grimly. "If we're going to go down, we're going to go down swinging, and I have an idea that might just give these tribute collectors something to remember us by." The die was cast. In 26 days, humanity would give the galaxy an answer that would change everything. Dr. Elizabeth Hayes had not slept in 3 days. Her laboratory at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center looked like a war zone. Covered with printouts of alien transmissions, energy readings, and theoretical calculations that would have made Einstein weep. She was running on nothing but coffee and the desperate need to find something, anything, that could help humanity survive the next 23 days. "Doctor, you need to see this." Her assistant, Dr. Michael Park, burst through the door holding a tablet. "We've been analyzing the energy signatures from their smaller ships, the ones they use for atmospheric scanning." Elizabeth looked up from her work, her eyes bloodshot and tired. "What about them?" "They're using some kind of quantum resonance field to maintain structural integrity while operating in different gravitational environments. But here's the thing. The resonance frequency is incredibly narrow. If we could disrupt it..." Elizabeth snatched the tablet and studied the data. For the first time in days, she felt a spark of hope. "How narrow?" "Within 0.001% of the base frequency. Any variation outside that range and their ships would literally tear themselves apart under gravitational stress." Elizabeth's mind raced. "But we'd need to generate a massive electromagnetic pulse at exactly the right frequency. And we'd need to do it from multiple points simultaneously to create interference patterns." "That's the problem," Michael said. "We don't have technology capable of generating that kind of focused EM pulse. Our most powerful transmitters aren't even close." Elizabeth stared at the data for a long moment, then grabbed her phone. "Captain Chen, it's Dr. Hayes. I need you to get me in touch with someone at CERN. Right now." 8,000 miles away, Captain Sarah Chen was dealing with problems of her own. The alien fleet had grown to over 100 ships, and their patrol schedules had become more aggressive. Worse, intelligence reports indicated that similar fleets were arriving at other human colonies throughout the solar system. "Captain," Lieutenant Rodriguez called out, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Geneva." The main screen lit up with the image of Dr. Marcus Weiss, CERN's director. His usually calm demeanor was replaced with barely contained excitement. "Captain Chen, Dr. Hayes contacted me with a rather extraordinary request. She wants to use our particle accelerator as a weapon." Sarah felt her pulse quicken. "Explain." Dr. Weiss gestured to someone off-screen, and a complex diagram appeared. "The Large Hadron Collider generates incredibly powerful electromagnetic fields when it operates. With some modifications, very dangerous modifications, we could turn it into the world's most powerful radio transmitter." "Would it work against the alien ships?" "According to Dr. Hayes' calculations, yes. But there are problems. First, we can only generate the pulse for a few seconds before the entire facility would overload and explode. Second, We'd need similar installations around the world to create the interference pattern needed to disrupt their ships. Sarah studied the diagram. What about the other particle accelerators? Fermilab, KEK in Japan, the one in China? That's exactly what we're thinking. If we can coordinate simultaneous pulses from every major particle accelerator on Earth... Dr. Weiss paused. Captain, we're talking about turning humanity's greatest scientific achievements into weapons of war. Doctor, Sarah said quietly, we're talking about survival. While the scientists worked on their electromagnetic weapon, humanity's military leaders were planning something equally unprecedented. General Patterson had assembled representatives from every major military force on Earth in a secure bunker beneath the Pentagon. Ladies and gentlemen, Patterson began, conventional warfare is not an option. We've run every simulation, analyzed every possible scenario. Our missiles bounce off their shields. Our fighters can't even get close enough to engage. We need a different approach. Admiral Chen of the Chinese Navy leaned forward. What are you proposing, General? Asymmetric warfare. We don't fight their ships in space. We make them come to us. We turn our entire planet into a fortress. General Volkov from Russia frowned. How do we force them to land? They can simply bombard us from orbit. Patterson smiled grimly. Because we're going to give them something they want more than our surrender. We're going to give them a reason to come down and take it personally. On the main screen, a map of Earth appeared, covered with red dots. Every major city on Earth is being evacuated as we speak. We're moving 6 billion people into underground shelters, caves, and reinforced bunkers. The surface cities will be empty except for automated systems and some very special surprises. Field Marshal Davies from Britain studied the map. You're proposing to abandon the surface? I'm proposing to turn it into a trap. When they come down to collect their tribute from empty cities, they'll find something else waiting for them. General Nakamura from Japan's self-defense forces nodded slowly. Guerrilla warfare on a planetary scale, but General, their technology is designed for space combat and intimidating primitive civilizations into submission, Patterson interrupted. It's not designed for urban warfare against an enemy that refuses to stay down. As the meeting continued, similar conversations were taking place in hidden facilities around the world. Humanity was preparing for a war unlike any in their history. Dr. Hayes found herself in a secure video conference with the heads of every major scientific institution on Earth. The participants included Nobel Prize winners, leading physicists, engineers, and theorists, the brightest minds humanity had to offer. The electromagnetic pulse will disable their smaller ships, she explained, but their larger vessels have redundant systems. We need something more. Dr. Sarah Kim from Seoul National University raised her hand. What about their communication systems? If they're coordinating a fleet that size, they need constant data exchange. That's brilliant, said Dr. Petrov from Moscow. If we can overload their communication networks with meaningless data... Dr. Hayes nodded excitedly. A denial of service attack on a galactic scale. But we'd need to transmit on their exact frequencies. We have those frequencies, said Dr. Chen from Beijing. My team has been analyzing their transmissions. We can replicate their communication protocols. Dr. Hayes looked around at the faces on her screen. Scientists from dozens of countries working together with the intensity she'd never seen before. How long do we need to prepare? Give us 2 weeks, said Dr. Kim. We can turn every radio telescope, communication satellite, and broadcasting station on Earth into a coordinated jamming network. 2 weeks, Dr. Hayes repeated. We have 19 days left. Meanwhile, Captain Sarah Chen was overseeing the most audacious plan in human history. Operation Trojan Horse was simple in concept, but staggering in execution. Humanity would appear to surrender, but it would be surrender with a twist. Status report, she called out to her bridge crew. All evacuation zones are ahead of schedule, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported. Beijing, London, New York, Moscow, all major population centers will be emptied within the week. What about the volunteers? Rodriguez's expression grew somber. 50,000 confirmed so far, all military personnel, all volunteers. Sarah nodded grimly. Operation Trojan Horse required 50,000 men and women to pose as the surrendering human tribute. They would be loaded onto transport ships and taken to the alien fleet, where they would be processed for shipment to alien worlds. Except these particular humans would be carrying some very special cargo. Captain Chen, came a voice from the communication station. Priority message from Colonel Anders in Colorado. The screen lit up with the image of Colonel Jack Anders, the grizzled commander of NORAD. Behind him, Sarah could see technicians working frantically on some kind of equipment. Captain, the packages are ready. All 50,000 of them. Sarah felt her stomach tighten. The packages were small nuclear devices, each one designed to look like standard medical equipment that humans might carry. When the volunteers were taken aboard the alien ships, they would activate the devices simultaneously. It was a suicide mission on a scale never before attempted in human history. Colonel, have you explained to the volunteers exactly what they're signing up for? Anders nodded. Every one of them knows this is a one-way trip. They volunteered anyway. His voice grew quiet. Captain, I've never been prouder to serve alongside human beings. Sarah stared at the screen, thinking about 50,000 people who had volunteered to die for the chance to strike back at their would-be conquerors. Make sure they know that their sacrifice won't be forgotten. They know, Captain. They also know something else. What's that? Anders smiled grimly. They know they're going to take a lot of alien bastards with them. High Commander Zefak was growing increasingly puzzled by the human response. His scouts reported massive population movements across the planet's surface. The humans appeared to be abandoning their cities and retreating underground. Perhaps they are preparing to surrender, suggested his aide. Many species hide their populations to prevent us from taking more than the required tribute. Zefak studied the tactical reports. The human military was still active, but their positions had changed. Instead of massing for a hopeless assault on the fleet, they were dispersing into smaller units and taking defensive positions around their major cities. They're preparing for a siege, he realized. How primitive. His aide chittered nervously. Commander, there is another issue. The humans have been broadcasting on multiple frequencies. Our communication systems are experiencing some interference. Handle it, Zefak said dismissively. He had more important concerns. In 16 rotations, the tribute deadline would expire. If the humans continued to resist, he would have to begin the systematic destruction of their major cities until they surrendered. It was always messy when species chose to resist, but the outcome was inevitable. On Earth, the final preparations were nearing completion. Dr. Hayes stood in the control room of CERN, surrounded by technicians making last-minute adjustments to equipment that had been pushed far beyond its design specifications. Electromagnetic pulse generators are online and synchronized with installations on every continent, reported Dr. Weiss. When we activate, we'll have approximately 30 seconds before the systems overload. Jamming networks are ready, added Dr. Kim via video link from Seoul. Every radio telescope, satellite dish, and broadcasting station on Earth is pointed at their fleet. When we activate, we'll flood their communication frequencies with enough meaningless data to shut down their entire command structure. Dr. Hayes nodded and opened a communication channel to Captain Chen. Captain, the science teams are ready. How are things on your end? Sarah's image appeared on screen, and Hayes could see the determination in her eyes. The volunteers are in position. All 50,000 are ready to board the transport shuttles when the aliens come to collect their tribute. And the conventional forces? Every major city on Earth is now a fortress. Underground tunnel networks connect defensive positions. We have supplies for 6 months of siege warfare." Sarah paused. "Dr. Hayes, do you really think this plan has a chance?" Elizabeth looked around the control room at the dozens of scientists and technicians who had worked around the clock to turn humanity's greatest achievements into weapons of war. "Captain, I've spent my entire career studying the universe. I've learned that the universe doesn't care about probability. It only cares about possibility. And this is possible." 16 days after the aliens' ultimatum, humanity was as ready as it would ever be. The last message sent from Earth to the Galactic Tribute Council was broadcast on every frequency, in every human language, and transmitted to every ship in the alien fleet. It was read by President Martinez from a bunker deep beneath Washington, D.C. To the Galactic Tribute Council and High Commander Zefak, "You gave us 30 days to surrender our people to slavery. You demonstrated your power by destroying part of Mars. You expected us to surrender out of fear. We are humans. We do not surrender. You want 50 million of our people? Come down here and take them. You want our resources? Come down here and take them. You want our scientists? Come down here and take them. But understand this. We will not make it easy for you. Every street will be a battlefield. Every building will be a fortress. Every human being you meet will be an enemy who refuses to kneel. You have made the mistake of believing that superior technology guarantees victory. You are about to learn why that assumption has led to the downfall of conquerors throughout human history. Welcome to Earth. Try to enjoy your stay." High Commander Zefak received the message in his command chamber and felt something he hadn't experienced in over 2 centuries: genuine anger. The humans had not only refused to surrender, they had insulted the Galactic Tribute Council. "Prepare the assault shuttles," he ordered. "We will collect the tribute by force, and then we will make an example of this world that will be remembered throughout the galaxy." As the first alien shuttles launched from the massive ships and began their descent toward Earth's atmosphere, humanity held its breath. The battle for Earth was about to begin. Captain Sarah Chen watched the alien shuttles descend toward the major population centers and felt a cold satisfaction. The aliens were doing exactly what humanity had hoped they would do. They were coming down to collect their tribute in person. "All stations, this is command," she broadcast to every human military unit on the planet. "The enemy is entering the atmosphere. Execute Operation Trojan Horse. Execute Operation Prometheus. Execute Operation David Sling." Across the Earth, 50,000 volunteers emerged from hidden shelters and began walking toward predetermined collection points in the empty cities. They carried small bags of personal belongings and medical devices. They looked like defeated humans ready to surrender. They were anything but defeated. At CERN, Dr. Hayes placed her hand on the activation switch. "All stations, this is Prometheus Control. Beginning countdown. 10 seconds to pulse generation." In Seoul, Dr. Kim initiated the jamming network. "Jamming network active. Beginning data flood in 3, 2, 1. The battle for humanity's freedom had begun. The first sign that something was wrong came when High Commander Zefak's communication systems began to fail. Static filled every channel, voices broke into incomprehensible fragments, and data streams became corrupted streams of meaningless noise. "What is happening?" Zefak demanded as his communication officer struggled with the controls. "Unknown interference, Commander. Every frequency is being flooded with data. The humans appear to be broadcasting from hundreds of sources simultaneously." Before Zefak could respond, his tactical officer called out in alarm. "Commander, energy spike detected from the planet's surface. Multiple sources." The electromagnetic pulse hit the fleet like an invisible tsunami. The smaller scout ships, dependent on their quantum resonance fields, shuddered as their structural integrity systems fluctuated. Warning lights flashed across control panels as gravitational compensation fields wavered. On Earth, Dr. Hayes watched the power levels spike beyond anything the Large Hadron Collider had ever produced. 30 seconds to overload, she shouted over the rising whine of overstressed equipment. All stations, maintain pulse! Around the world, particle accelerators pushed themselves to destruction. Their beams focused into a coordinated electromagnetic weapon that reached across space to strike at the alien fleet. Aboard the flagship, Zefak felt the deck plates vibrate beneath his feet. Two of his smaller vessels were already dropping out of formation, their pilots fighting to maintain control as their ships threatened to tear themselves apart. "Sir!" his aide chittered in panic. 3 scout ships are reporting critical system failures. They're requesting permission to withdraw from the engagement zone. Zefak's compound eyes fixed on the tactical display showing Earth. Impossible. Their technology is primitive. How are they? An explosion lit up space as one of his scout ships lost its battle with gravitational forces and collapsed into itself, creating a brief star before vanishing entirely. All small craft, withdraw to safe distance, Zefak ordered. Deploy the assault shuttles from the heavy cruisers only. But the damage was done. Humanity had just announced to the galaxy that they were not helpless prey. The assault shuttles that survived the electromagnetic barrage descended toward Earth's major cities like armored meteors. Each shuttle carried 100 Zefak soldiers, elite warriors from a dozen different species that had been conquered over the centuries. They expected to find cowering humans hiding in their primitive shelters. Instead, they found empty cities and 50,000 volunteers walking calmly toward the landing zones. Lieutenant Commander Vex of the 47th Assault Squadron landed his shuttle in what the humans called Times Square. The massive electronic billboards were dark, and the streets that intelligence reports said should be packed with millions of humans were eerily empty, except for the small groups of humans approaching with their hands raised. "Too easy," muttered Sergeant Crix, a veteran warrior from a species that looked like a cross between a bear and a lizard. "Where are the rest of them?" Vex studied the humans through his targeting scope. They looked defeated, carrying small bags and moving slowly. Exactly what tribute collectors expected to see. "Begin processing. Standard procedures." The human volunteers were herded into the shuttles with practiced efficiency. They submitted without resistance, speaking quietly among themselves in what the universal translators interpreted as prayers or final farewells. To the alien soldiers, they looked like any other conquered population. Sarah Chen watched the live feeds from hidden cameras throughout the city. The volunteers were performing perfectly, looking defeated while carrying humanity's most desperate gambit in their luggage. "Transport shuttles are loaded and departing," reported Lieutenant Rodriguez. "Estimate 20 minutes until they reach the main fleet." Sarah opened a communication channel to the volunteer coordinator. "Colonel Anders, are our people ready?" Anders's voice was steady despite what they all knew was coming. "All volunteers are in position aboard enemy vessels. Devices are armed and ready. They're just waiting for your signal, Captain." Sarah looked at the countdown timer on her screen. In 18 minutes, 50,000 human beings would sacrifice their lives to strike at the heart of the alien fleet. She had to wait until the shuttles were inside the enemy ship's defensive perimeters. "Stand by, Colonel. Not yet." High Commander Zefak watched the tribute shuttles dock with his larger vessels with satisfaction. Despite the humans' attempts at resistance, the outcome was proceeding as expected. The electromagnetic interference had been troublesome, but his heavy ships had weathered it without serious damage. "Status report on tribute collection," he ordered. "First wave complete, Commander. 50,000 humans secured aboard vessels Harvester 7 through Harvester 20. They are being processed for transport to the industrial worlds." Zefak nodded. "Excellent. Begin second wave deployment. I want 1 million humans collected within the rotation." His aide hesitated. "Commander, there is a problem. Our scouts report that the remaining human population appears to have retreated underground. The surface cities are largely empty. Then we dig them out, Zefak said dismissively. Deploy the bombardment platforms. Begin with the largest population centers. When they see their cities burning, they will surrender. But before he could give the order to commence bombardment, alarms began blaring throughout the flagship. "Multiple detonations detected," screamed the tactical officer. "Internal explosions aboard Harvester 789. The list continued as nuclear fire bloomed within the hulls of 13 different ships. Zefak watched in horror as 13 of his heavy cruisers lit up like dying stars, their hulls cracking open to spill atmosphere and debris into space. Secondary explosions followed as the ship's own weapon systems overloaded and detonated. "How is this possible?" he whispered. His aide was frantically working at a control panel. "The humans, the tribute humans, they were carrying some kind of explosive devices. They detonated them simultaneously throughout the fleet." In the space of 30 seconds, humanity had destroyed nearly a quarter of the Galactic Tribute Council's fleet. On Earth, Sarah Chen allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction as she watched the alien ships burn. The volunteers had succeeded beyond their most optimistic projections, but she knew this was only the beginning. "All ground units, this is command," she broadcast. "The enemy will now begin orbital bombardment. Execute Operation Fortress. All civilians to deepest shelters. All combat units to prepared positions." As if in response to her words, beams of energy began reaching down from the remaining alien ships to strike at Earth's cities. Where the beams touched, buildings simply vanished, leaving craters of molten glass. The aliens were no longer interested in preserving the tribute. They wanted revenge. But the cities they were destroying were already empty. Humanity had anticipated this response and planned accordingly. Beneath London, General Davies coordinated the defense of Western Europe from a command center dug into bedrock 300 meters below the surface. "Bombardment has begun," he reported to the Global Command Network. "Enemy is targeting major population centers as expected." "Copy that, London," came Sarah's voice from orbit. "Are the surprises ready?" Davies smiled grimly. "Oh yes, Captain. They're in for quite a shock when they come down to inspect the damage." The orbital bombardment continued for 6 hours. From space, it appeared that humanity's resistance had been crushed. The major cities of Earth were smoking craters, and no signs of life could be detected on the surface. High Commander Zefak studied the destruction with satisfaction. The humans had cost him 13 ships, but the lesson had been taught. When the tribute collectors came for your people, you surrendered or you died. "Deploy ground teams to verify compliance," he ordered. "I want confirmation that human resistance has been eliminated." But when the alien ground forces landed in the ruins of Earth's cities, they found something unexpected. The crater where New York City had been contained a maze of tunnels and reinforced bunkers that the orbital bombardment had barely touched. And those tunnels were not empty. Captain Maria Santos of the United States Marine Corps had been born in Los Angeles, raised in Texas, and trained in the toughest military academies on Earth. She had never expected to fight aliens, but she adapted to the situation with typical human flexibility. "Contact front," she shouted as the first alien soldiers emerged from their landing craft into the ruins of Manhattan. "Light them up." The humans had learned something important during their brief exposure to alien technology. The aliens' personal armor was designed to stop energy weapons and high-velocity projectiles. It was not designed to stop a barrage of low-tech explosives and improvised weapons. Santos watched with satisfaction as human-manufactured grenades and explosive charges tore through alien squads that had expected to face a defeated enemy. The aliens' superior technology meant nothing when a building collapsed on top of them or when they walked into a minefield. "This is Bravo Squad," came a voice over her radio. We've got them bottled up in Times Square. They're calling for backup. Negative, Santos replied. Let them call. The more they send down here, the more we can kill. Similar scenes were playing out in the ruins of cities around the world. The aliens had expected to find defeated humans hiding in caves. Instead, they found a coordinated resistance that had turned the entire planet into a fortress. Beneath Tokyo, Colonel Takeshi Yamamoto led a force of Japanese self-defense forces in a running battle through subway tunnels that connected to a vast underground network. His enemy was a squad of reptilian aliens armed with plasma weapons that could cut through steel. Yamamoto to all units, he broadcast. They're following predictable patterns. Channel them toward the prepared positions. The aliens were good soldiers, but they fought like soldiers. They advanced by the book, secured positions methodically, and communicated through standard military channels. The humans fought like humans. They used tactics that would have horrified a military academy. Ambushes, booby traps, suicide attacks, and guerrilla warfare that ignored every convention of civilized combat. The aliens had technology. The humans had desperation and creativity. High Commander Zefak watched the reports flood in from the ground teams and felt something he had never experienced in over 3 centuries of tribute collection: fear. Ground Team 77 has been eliminated, reported his communications officer. Ground Team 12-4 is requesting immediate extraction. Ground Team 15-1 has lost all communication. How many humans are we facing? Zefak demanded. Intelligence estimates indicate the humans have dispersed their population into millions of small groups throughout underground networks on every continent. Our ground teams are facing coordinated resistance at every landing site. Zefak studied the tactical display. His fleet was losing ships steadily to human attacks that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere. His ground forces were being systematically eliminated by an enemy that refused to fight fair. This is not how tribute collection works, he muttered. His aide approached carefully. Commander, we have received a message from the Galactic Council. They are concerned about the delay. The message from the Council was brief and to the point. High Commander Zefak, your tribute collection mission should have been completed by now. Explain the delay. Zefak stared at the message for a long time before dictating his response. Honored Council, the species known as humans is not responding to standard tribute collection procedures. They have caused significant casualties to the fleet and show no signs of surrender despite overwhelming demonstrations of force. The response came back within hours. High Commander, in 3,000 years of tribute collection, no species has ever successfully resisted. Complete your mission or face replacement. That night, as Earth turned away from the sun, something unprecedented happened in the galaxy. In hidden bunkers and scattered settlements on 100 different worlds, creatures that had once been free before the tribute collectors came began to receive messages. The messages came through old communication networks that the Galactic Council thought had been destroyed. They were transmitted by human radio equipment that had somehow survived the bombardment and broadcast a simple message in dozens of languages. This is Earth. We are humans. We are fighting back. We are winning. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, a creature that had once ruled its own planet lifted its head from the work that had consumed its life for 50 years. The message continued. To all free beings held in slavery by the Galactic Tribute Council, you are not alone. You are not forgotten. Resistance is possible. On industrial worlds throughout the galaxy, beings that had submitted to tribute centuries ago began to remember what freedom looked like. The human resistance was doing more than fighting for Earth. They were reminding the galaxy that submission was a choice, not an inevitability. Captain Sarah Chen received the communication from the surface with disbelief. General Patterson, can you repeat that? I said we've captured one of their command posts. Patterson's voice crackled through the communication system. Turns out their ground troops aren't used to fighting an enemy that doesn't surrender when outnumbered. Sarah looked at the tactical display. Human forces had not only held their positions, they were actually advancing against the alien ground troops. The raids were becoming full-scale battles, and somehow, impossibly, humanity was winning. What's the status on their fleet? They've stopped deploying smaller ships entirely after we demonstrated that we can kill them. But, Captain, they're massing their heavy cruisers for something big. I think they're preparing to glass the entire planet. Sarah had expected this. When an enemy couldn't be defeated conventionally, the only option left was total destruction. How long do we have? Intelligence estimates 12 hours before they're in position for planetary bombardment. 12 hours. Sarah opened a communication channel to every human command post on Earth and in orbit. All stations, this is Captain Chen. Execute Operation Samson. I repeat, execute Operation Samson. Operation Samson was humanity's final gambit. If they were going to die, they would take as many of their enemies with them as possible. Dr. Elizabeth Hayes stood in what remained of CERN, now converted into a control center for humanity's most desperate plan. Around her, technicians worked frantically to prepare equipment that had never been designed for what they were about to attempt. "Status report," she called out. "Quantum resonance generators are online," reported Dr. Park. "We've synchronized with every major power plant on Earth. When we activate, we'll create a quantum field that should disrupt their entire fleet." Dr. Hayes nodded grimly. "And the cost? Total power grid failure. Every major power source on Earth will overload simultaneously. We'll be back to pre-industrial technology levels. But it will work." Dr. Park looked at his calculations one more time. "If our theories are correct, yes. We'll create a quantum cascade that will affect every ship using their technology within a light year of Earth." Dr. Hayes opened a communication channel to Captain Chen. "Captain, Samson is ready. But understand, if we do this, there's no going back. Earth will be without power for years." Sarah's response was immediate. "Doctor, if we don't do this, Earth will be without humans forever. Execute Samson." The quantum field generators came online across Earth with a sound like reality tearing. Every power plant, every nuclear reactor, every solar array fed its energy into a focused burst of quantum disruption that reached out across space to touch the alien fleet. High Commander Zefak felt his flagship shudder as systems throughout the ship began to fail. The quantum resonance that held his advanced technology together was coming apart under the assault of forces he didn't understand. "All ships, emergency withdrawal," he ordered. "Execute hyperspace jump immediately." But his ships were too damaged. As the quantum cascade washed over the fleet, the delicate technology that allowed faster-than-light travel began to fail. One by one, the massive ships lost power and began drifting helplessly in space. On Earth, the lights went out. Every city, every town, every installation went dark as humanity's power grid destroyed itself to deliver one final blow to their attackers. But in that darkness, humanity had achieved something no species had ever accomplished. They had fought the Galactic Tribute Council to a standstill. The news of Earth's resistance spread through the galaxy like wildfire. On world after world, beings that had submitted to tribute began to whisper of the humans who had said no. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session for the first time in 1,000 years. The report from High Commander Zefak was read in shocked silence. "Honored Council, I must report the failure of tribute collection on the world-designated Earth. The species known as humans has successfully resisted tribute collection and inflicted severe casualties on Council forces. The human resistance is unlike anything encountered in Council history. They appear incapable of surrender and show no regard for overwhelming odds. I request immediate reinforcement of..." The message was cut off as Zefak's flagship went dark. Council leader Thane, an ancient being who had overseen tribute collection for 2 millennia, spoke into the silence. In 3,000 years, no species has ever resisted successfully. The humans have destroyed a tribute fleet. They have denied us our rightful collection. They have... He paused, struggling with concepts that had never applied before. They have won. The implications were staggering. If one species could resist, others might follow. The entire system of galactic tribute, built on the assumption that superior technology guaranteed submission, was threatened. "What do we do?" asked Councilmember Vex. Thane was quiet for a long moment. "We do what we have never had to do before. We negotiate." 6 months later, the first Galactic Council diplomatic vessel approached Earth. The planet still showed scars from the battle. Dark cities, cratered landscapes, and the debris of destroyed alien ships drifting in orbit. But Earth also showed something else. Human ships, built with scavenged alien technology and human ingenuity, patrolled the solar system. The species that had been dismissed as primitive had reverse-engineered captured alien technology and built their own fleet. The message from Earth was broadcast on all frequencies as the diplomatic vessel approached. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. You are entering human space. State your business." The response from the Galactic Council ship was unprecedented in its politeness. "Captain Chen, we request permission to discuss terms of mutual cooperation between the Galactic Council and the human species." Sarah smiled as she looked out at the stars that humanity was now free to explore. "Permission granted, but understand this. We negotiate as equals, or we don't negotiate at all." The galaxy would never be the same. The age of tribute was ending, and the age of human exploration was just beginning. Years later, beings throughout the galaxy would tell their children about the humans who looked at impossible odds and said no. They would speak of the species that taught the universe that freedom was not given. It was taken. And on worlds throughout the galaxy, when tyrants demanded submission, beings would remember the human response and find the courage to stand up and fight. Humanity had not just saved itself. It had reminded the galaxy what it meant to be free.